Welcome back to the Living Transplant Podcast, Season 4. In this episode, I sat down with Afsana Lallani, a cat lover and nursing graduate who made an appeal to find a living liver donor to save her life. We talk about being young and living with a chronic illness, facing death, and how a supportive community can make all the difference. We are later joined by Dilshad Lallani. Yes, you guessed it, Afsana's mother, a caregiver and a pediatric nurse practitioner. She speaks about the family journey in supporting someone on the transplant waitlist, being an emotional support, and what it was like to be a nurse practitioner living through the process with her daughter on the verge of death. Please enjoy. Welcome back to the Living Transplant Podcast. I'm so thrilled to have Afsana with me first, and then we will have her mom joining us, Dilshad, in a little while. Thank you so much, ladies, for joining me today.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, and it's my pleasure.
So I'm going to start with you, Afsana. I'm wondering if you can tell our listeners a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I'm 24 right now. I live in Toronto alone with my cat, and I just graduated university in a nursing program this past June. And I used to play ice hockey growing up as a kid, but then when I was sick, I had to stop. So I picked up yoga and more painting. I also work in research and in other health roles where I am a lived experienced advisor for a lot of different health organizations like PSC Partners, which is a liver disease organization.
Incredible. And so, you touched a little bit about yourself without going too deep into it. You mentioned liver disease and supporting people within that community. I'm wondering if you can bring me back to just before your diagnosis and tell me a little bit about how you were feeling and what led you and your family to go and get some support.
So I was feeling pretty tummy sick, I would say, when I was 16. And I've always had a very picky eating habit growing up and a lot of issues with trying to gain weight because I'm underweight, but it's just because of a fast metabolism. So these tummy pains were really new to me. I'd never felt them before. And I was extremely exhausted all of a sudden. So I thought maybe hockey was too much at that time, or school was just really stressful and pressing, but the exhaustion never went away, and neither did that tummy pain. So I ended up catching the flu one weekend when my parents were out of town, and that tummy pain came back in the middle of the flu. And it was so painful to the point where I couldn't move. And that's when I knew something was wrong and I needed medical help. So as soon as my parents got back to town, I was like, I can't do this. Let's go. So we went to the ER, and that's where my workup began with a lot of blood work, MRIs, liver biopsies at the kids. They definitely knew immediately at the ER that something was wrong, and my numbers weren't normal. How I was feeling wasn't normal. And so clearly it led to a diagnosis eventually of PSC, or primary sclerosing cholangitis, which is a really rare autoimmune liver disease. And unfortunately, it has no cure. So when I got this diagnosis, I was kind of scared, and I didn't know what this disease was. The internet said I had 15 years to live. So that wasn't reassuring, and that there was no cure. So I really thought I only had those 15 years, if anything. But I was also a little bit happy that I got a diagnosis in the first place, because we were going through these pains and these hospital visits so much that getting the diagnosis was a relieving feeling that I had more answers now, and that I wasn't going crazy thinking that something was wrong with me when nothing was. There was something wrong.
And so 16, you find out that you're diagnosed with this rare autoimmune disease and you're in hospital with your family, you're a busy young person. How did you guys shift gears and I guess get into the mode of, this is our diagnosis, this is what we need to do to move forward. And when did you find out that a transplant was the option to survive?
Well, when I got the diagnosis and I was told there was no cure, they did tell me that there is a chance I could get a transplant down the road if it does come to that. But I was reassured by my team in pediatric care that you may not ever need one. And it's very unlikely that this situation would happen to me. But it did happen to me. And I did hear that news when I crossed the street into adult care. And my doctor saw that I was getting sicker and I was deteriorating and my quality of life was going down. So they made a referral to the transplant team at that point once I exhausted all treatment options. But I had to go through all that exhausting treatment option steps first. So a lot of medication trials and treatment options that I continuously just didn't respond to. So I had to go through the transplant pathway. But I actually ended up going back to my doctor when the transplant team said it wasn't time for me because I wasn't sick enough, which was interesting because you have to be sick enough to get a transplant. But if you're being referred there, it must be that you are sick enough. So that was another hurdle our family had to kind of go through and persevere for another year and a half before I did get that second referral back to transplant to go through the process fully. But leading up to transplant, dealing with my health as a family was very different than our usual lives at that time, I think. I mean, I tried to take the illness as something in the background of my life, but it became the foreground of my life later. And I did go to university, but I factored in the point that I am sick and I need to stay near my transplant center. That may be something down the road. So I chose a university near my transplant center and near my family for the support I needed. And my dad even switched his job so that he would be working at home or more locally, and then in the evenings, whereas my mom worked in the daytime, so that at least one parent would be around to help take me to appointments and go to different like procedures. And even if I was just feeling sick, someone had to pick me up from school at that time. It was high school. So it was a huge adjustment. Even my sisters didn't know what this disease was. It's just this monster living with us now.
So as a young person, we expect to go through certain things at certain phases, going through your high school career, dating, the acceptance into university, all of these kind of milestones that you go through between that kind of 14 to 21 age. And it's such a critical time in our lives. And how did you balance trying to stay a kid, but then also, accepting this reality that you're living with a chronic illness?
I think that I accepted it pretty early on. I already had one chronic illness, rheumatoid arthritis, for my entire life. So getting another chronic illness seemed like another badge to wear at that time. And I didn't let it define me.
That's amazing. And so when you got to the point where they said, okay, we're at that tipping point of you are sick enough that you need a transplant, but you're still healthy enough to be able to go through this surgery. Your family stepped up and tried to see if they were a match. And we've discussed, unfortunately, there wasn't a match within your family. So how did you move forward to look for a living donor while you waited on that deceased donation list?
It was a little disheartening and I didn't know what to do. But eventually I came to the idea of a social media public appeal campaign, which I started on Facebook. But that initial want to do that was not there. And I really didn't want to have to expose myself on social media like that about my health. when I was a private person when it came to that subject. I didn't like telling people, I didn't like the judgment that came along with liver disease. And I also didn't like people who were my age thinking that it was too hard to be friends with me or too much to be around me and not know how to act. But really, I was the same person. I was just with another badge.
Yeah, that's got to be something all on its own, right? That you just want to be known as Afsana. Like you don't want to be known as my sick friend. How did you stay positive through, your social media campaign and the wait and wondering? I know for most people, the wait is sometimes even harder than the act of the surgery.
Yeah, it was really hard to wait. And I tried to keep busy while that campaign was up and running, that I finally had the will to press post on. And it took 9 months after the launch of that campaign to find an anonymous donor for me. And during that time, I would say I kept very positive for the first half. Then the second half, I started to lose a little bit of hope. And then I lost my faith in the medical system, which regained when I got a donor call. But I did lose it. And I tried so hard to keep my positivity in my grasp, but it didn't work for me after a while of waiting because I saw people around me in my community that were getting transplants and who were listed after me, but they got theirs first. And I always questioned, why not me? When is it my turn? How many more people get a liver and me not? So I had a lot of questions in my head as I got sicker waiting, but that positive first half went really well for me. I focused on friends and I kept doing things in my daily life that made me still feel like a person separate from my disease, even though I felt pretty restricted in what I could do in a day. I couldn't even wash my hair, but just something simple as petting my cat that day or cutting an apple was the biggest deal for me, that I was happy with just that. I could still be a cat mom person. That's someone I want to be because I love my cat. So when I was so sick and waiting, feeling like I had other responsibilities kept me going. And I also had a huge support system behind me. I can't echo that enough, how important they are, but they helped keep me positive. My friends, especially my family, both, and everyone really behind me. I go to a prayer hall and there was a huge community there that supported me. And so I had lots of people who were helping me and keeping me positive. So I really appreciated that as well.
So you said, you waited those 9 months and then you got a call that a donor had been found. What did it feel like when you picked up the phone and that was the call that you'd received?
My immediate feeling was that it felt like Christmas morning, but in the form of a phone call. And I was really excited to hang up the phone and call my mom immediately. And that's exactly what I did. But as soon as I hung up the phone on my mom and got into my apartment because I was actually walking home from an appointment, um, I came back up to my apartment and I realized the reality of going through a transplant. And I was so nervous and scared. But that fear went away because my faith in the medical system was restored.
Yeah, getting that call you must have all of the emotions, right? All sides of the coin all crashing into each other in one moment, and not a lot of prep that you can have. Eventually the call is going to happen, but you just don't know when, right? So all happening at once. And so you went in, your incredible donor donated a portion of their liver to you, and you woke up. The surgery was a success. How was that recovery for you?
Recovery was hard. I spent 1 month in the hospital recovering because I did have hiccups throughout, but I did come out of the hospital after that 1 month and learned that sometimes it's not as great to be out of the hospital during recovery because there's a whole other kind of recovery at home because you don't have like your healthcare team to support you and get your meds for you. It's your turn to get up and go do it. So it was a lot of adjustments and a lot of learning that had to happen, including learning how to sit in a chair after a surgery, how to go walk down the hall in your unit. That was all very hard to do while in pain right after a surgery with such a big incision on your tummy. But I was very motivated because I wanted to walk, eat, go to the bathroom, then go home. Those were my three goals I focused on, hyper focused, I would say. My mom can agree with that, I think. But once I did get those checkpoints done of my three goals, I ended up getting acute liver rejection. And so that kept me in the hospital for an extra 2 weeks. And it was a tough treatment to go through, but I made it through after a while. And here today, my liver is very happy and we get along now just fine. So I don't have rejection anymore. And I got to go home to my cat right before Christmas. So all the timing worked out there. But then at home, getting out of bed was a whole new challenge that I had to learn how to do. Making cheese and crackers, cleaning, that was all hard to do with a new scar. So I had my mom there to help me. She stayed with me for 2 months, I would say, after surgery when I was discharged. And she helped me. She made my cheese and crackers for me and she made my tea for me and she helped with the cleaning a lot. And it was nice to have someone around to just talk to, especially when you're on all those medications for the first time and learning to adjust to them. It was nice to have someone to talk to.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, that roller coaster. I remember my nephrologist after my transplant said, don't be afraid of the word rejection because most patients go through rejection. It's just making sure that we catch it and we can treat it and then you can continue on. And I remember hearing that and thinking, oh my goodness, but it kind of took that edge off of it to know that it's, a lot of us are in this and that there's others that have been through this before and reaching out to those people who have been through that. But, thinking about your recovery, you were also going through school at this point. And so did you pause your degree while you were in hospital, or did you just pause it for the actual surgery?
So I did end up taking a semester off school for my transplant and recovery time period. But I lucked out because my transplant happened during my university's exams and winter break. So it led into a brand new semester. So I could complete the semester I had already been in and then take a leave for a semester, which I really didn't want to take. I went to the first class in January, but my brain was not ready to go back, I think, and my recovery wasn't there yet. So I took the semester off and focused on building up strength and working my mind again. And then once the summer hit, I did summer school to kind of catch up a little bit and then go back fully in September.
That's incredible. And so you recently graduated with a nursing degree, like you said. Congratulations. How did that feel to walk across that stage and, get your diploma and shake that hand with that green ribbon around your neck, knowing that you've been through all of this and yet still you persevered, and now you're going to be able to go back into that system that just, saved your life and help other people yourself?
Yeah, I do want to say the green ribbon was so important to me to wear. I know it wasn't typical for a student to wear something that wasn't part of the graduation gown that they provide. And I had to go through some channels to get them to agree. But it was important because I wanted to represent what I've been through this degree, and to bring awareness to what it is, and to say thank you to everyone who was a part of my journey to get me to cross that stage. And it was extremely rewarding and accomplishing to get to walk across the stage finally. And I had been through so much with my health during that degree that when I took each step walking across the stage, it felt like I was being rewarded for my perseverance, my determination, being brave in the degree and in my health. But also, I just felt so complete and whole, and that my dreams finally came true, that I was going to be a nurse finally. And that was the mindset I had when I was sick, just to focus on reaching my goals. And that's what I finally did. And I was really happy about that and proud of myself.
Yeah, you should be very proud of yourself. That's such an incredible accomplishment, and like you said, such bravery and perseverance to get there. So congratulations. And the people who are going to have you as their nurse are incredibly lucky that that they get to have you. That's amazing. So I'm wondering if you can tell me a little bit about you were part of our Great Actions Leave a Mark campaign recently, and there's been a lot of press around that and discussion about living organ donation and the scar and what it all means to you. Why did you decide to join the campaign?
I believe that my scar is really a beautiful mark, which is a big part of the campaign and what the meaning is behind that. And for me specifically, that mark represented my strength and perseverance through the adversity. And it reminded me of all the love and hope in the world that I was awakened to, I think, after my surgery. And I was reminded through my scar that there are really rare people out there, and really kind hearted, loving people out there, selfless people. And I happen to have caught one of those people and gotten the rarest gift ever from them, which is the gift of life. So participating in the campaign meant I got to show people my scar, which then turned into I get to show people who I am. And my scar is me. And it is my supportive community around me, which I was really proud to share with the world.
And I'm wondering, before I ask Mom to join us, do you have any advice for other people who are waiting for an organ right now?
Yes, I would say be patient and to stay positive and hopeful, because those are very important, but also to continue to live your life for you and not for your health. It doesn't really define who you are as a person. So it's important to keep up the things you love, to keep that positivity and hopefulness going. It almost fuels the other. So I would remind people of that fact reading.
Thank you so much, Afsana. We're so grateful to have you here today, but also to have you part of our campaign and part of our volunteer committee and everything that you do for the community. It's incredibly brave, and your strength shows through in all ways. And we're very proud and grateful to have you as part of our team. So thank you so much. And now, Mom, I'm wondering if you can join in.
Okay, thank you so much for having me.
So I'm wondering if you can tell us a little bit about yourself, if you can introduce yourself to our listeners.
Sure. Well, I am a mom to 3 lovely daughters, ages 26, 24, and 18, Afsana being the middle child, and also a wife to a very kind and loving husband who everyone loves. Professionally, I'm a nurse practitioner. Started out my career in pediatric cardiology as a staff nurse, And in the last 8 years, I've been practicing at Holland Bloorview Kids Rehab Hospital with the spinal cord and spina bifida injury clinic. And I care for teenagers and young adults from ages 14 to 25.
Wow. And so were you in that role supporting youth at the same time that your daughter's health started to deteriorate?
That's right. In fact, I had just started that particular job at Holland Bloorview. I started August 10th, I believe, and she was diagnosed Labor Day weekend. But before that, I also worked in primary care where I managed pediatrics and women's health. So yes.
Wow. So, as a nurse and then as a mother on top of that, when her health started to decline and you received that diagnosis, how did that feel? And how did you, I guess, kind of balance those two parts of yourself in this journey?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. And it was definitely a balancing act. And I think that my first emotional response was really informed, honestly, both my nursing knowledge and maternal instinct, if you will. Although I think from recalling what I said immediately after, it was more the nurse in me than the mother, though intertwined. And I recall being really concerned about the impact her diagnosis would have on her adolescent health and vice versa, her development. And I didn't focus so much on the mortality rate that was prognosticated or relayed to us, whereas her dad, asked very specific questions about the prognosis and exactly what PSC was and all the details of the anatomy and physiology.
Yeah, that's an interesting place to come from, the two sides of the coin of, where parents are. And out of curiosity, what does he do as a career?
Well, he was in finance, so it was no surprise that it was, focused on the numbers.
Right. Yes. And those must have been some scary stats for him as well.
Yes, definitely. And I do recall, once we got home and we were all quiet, I was sitting on the couch and Afsana was making her way to the kitchen. I said to her, "Hey, Afsana, this is such a rare disease," as I was doing more reading about it. And you had to get it. And then, I used the word sucks and I said, "That really sucks for you, right?" And she made a U-turn and came face to face with me. And she said, "Mom, it's okay because it's such a rare disease," like it was 0.001 or something like that. And I've been diagnosed, and which means no other child will be diagnosed this year. Yeah. And it was at that point, at that time, that, it dawned on me that I was going to support this kid with PSC. She was handling it so well, and she had allowed it to be what it was, and that she was going to live with it, manage it, respond to it, but at the same time, it was not going to define her at all.
That must have been a really proud moment for you as a mom.
It was very telling of her personality from day one. I've always said that she's an old soul, a very kindred spirit. And so it was quite a profound comment that she made, and very much telling of who she is. And we can see that today as well.
So, how did you as a family and you as a mom deal with her diagnosis and, her journey from diagnosis and prior up until that potential transplant time?
When she first started to complain about her intermittent pain, like it would have been in 2015, and then it became very persistent. And I'll never forget the night when she wanted to go to the ER. I think it was 2 a.m. or something, and she came into my room and tap, 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 and I was startled, right? And she said, "It's time to go to the ER. take me to the ER. And I said, is that bad? And she said, yes. And she's been through pain since she was 15 months old. She has a chronic condition. She's got arthritis. So she was, pain was not new to her at all. But I knew that when Afsana says it's time to go to the emerge, it's actually time to go to the emerge. Fast forward, when she was deteriorating a year before transplant, I would say, she became more noticeably more fatigued, her skin color more pale and ash, the white of her eyes were yellow. She couldn't climb the stairs anymore at home, and her dad had to carry her up. And I was saddened that home wasn't a good place for her anymore. And in fact, her condo downtown Toronto was better because it was smaller. She could reach, she didn't have to climb the stairs. She could be more independent there. And that's what was good for her. But it meant that we couldn't be together. So that was really difficult moment. But, the focus was Afsana. And so we had to do what we had to do. And we supported her staying downtown on her own. She did that. And I would visit her every weekend, or if she was ill, then I would stay with her. So that was a very difficult moment for us, where she couldn't be at home. As a parent, you want her at home, you want to nurture her, you want to take care of her, you want to be there every minute. Yet I had to allow this independence. And so I knew that independence was very important. And I think my nursing background also helped me, because I manage teenagers, and I know, the milestones when they are adolescent as they grow into young adults, and that this was a necessary step, and that Afsana wanted to be Afsana and not Afsana who has a PSC, no matter how sick she was, right? For example, she continued on school, right? So, the nursing background really did help in my mothering role. There's no doubt about it. And in terms of coping, there's no doubt it was a very difficult journey, since we had to watch Afsana deteriorate and come face to face with the possibility of death, since she had such a difficult time finding a match. We rode through that journey, I would say, with fortitude, grace, and faith. As a result of the incredible support we received from diverse communities in terms of culture, religion, and race around the globe. I had people from Africa emailing me and messaging me about, what is her name? We're going to church today. It's Sunday. We have to submit her name to the pastor here in Canada, in our community as well. We had people praying for her. So knowing and feeling that this type of love existed, right, really, I think helped us feel and understand that we were not alone. And so it was quite transformative of a journey, the kind that you truly realize that we are all but one humanity, right? We're part of one humanity, that we are more than the sum of the parts. And that awareness, I think, helped us to be formidable, right? We were bigger than just ourselves.
And that's so big for other people to hear as well, that there are all of these people who want to help. Maybe sometimes they just don't know how as well, but there are people from all over who are rooting for you and, want you to be successful through this journey and however they can support.
I would like to commend my mom, though, on how well she coped through it all. I was surprised. I thought there would be more tears involved and more clinginess, as I would expect from any mother with a dying child. But she did a really good job, and she did give me that space that I needed. And I know I didn't always have the best brain, because the toxins went to my brain a lot, and after a certain point it changed my personality, and I had a very short fuse with my mom sometimes.
Yeah, that is something that unfortunately I feel like us as kids do to our parents often, is you trust them and they're always going to be there and they're always going to support you. So they unfortunately get the wrath of all of our feelings, and the emotional dumping gets on them. And so I'm wondering, Dilshad, if you could tell me a little bit about how you felt when that call came in for transplant and when you found out that that donor had been found?
Well, describing it in words, to be honest, is difficult, right? It's really difficult. But I would say that hands down, we felt this overwhelming sense of relief mixed with joy and gratitude. We were so thrilled. And I felt like I felt like it was a bizarre feeling, but that, I was going to be a parent all over again, because Afsana was going to have another chance at life, right? Because we were in fact preparing for her not to have a transplant, not to be able to get a match. And so preparing for palliation, right? And so when that call came, it was a second chance. It was going to be a rebirth. Yeah, just super relieved and a sense of peace for that moment, for that time. I knew that there was, of course, the transplant still to come, the surgery, the risks involved. But at that moment, at that time, there was just that, moment where you can grab that peaceful moment and just experience it for what it was.
That call, that surgery, all of that, like you said, gave Afsana a second chance at life. You are in a unique situation where you're a nurse and a mother, and you deal with youth as well. How do you feel transplants and this second gift of life impact people who are this age? Is it different from adults? Is it unique for this age group? How would that be different for, say, somebody in their 50s or 60s? Have you seen?
From a knowledge standpoint, it has to be different. There's no doubt about it, because a younger person is going to react or respond based on stages and ages, right? And so, in that particular stage, they're often, oh, it's not going to happen to me. But this was something that happened to Afsana. And, the journey took her to places where other adolescent her age would not have experienced, right? So she and her awareness just became even higher and more deeper than I would say a 40, 50, 60, 70, 80-year-old, because they had an experience coming face to face with death. And so the transplant itself, what it might mean to a teen versus a 50-year-old at the end, because death is death. Right. And so when you come face to face, I don't really think that it matters whether you're a teenager versus a 50, 60-year-old. From a practical standpoint, for a teen, I would think that they would feel that they could actually, reach their goals that they haven't already, right? They haven't met those milestones yet. And now there's an opportunity to do so.
I'm wondering if Afsana has changed since this whole process, and if your family has changed at all.
I think so. She has to have, right? So I think, Afsana was always very creative, independent, self-determined from day one. She was very hardworking towards her goals. And I think that the journey has been very much transformative for her. She was always an old soul, as I said earlier, similar to her father. But the level of maturity, the awareness about life and its purpose has been her greatest area of growth, I would say. This awareness, I think, is very much transcending too. And I really enjoy listening to her perspectives, because they are very deep, but yet so simply put. Right. So, I'm very much at awe with her. And sometimes I look at her and I think, is she really my kid? Right. And I have to shake myself.
That's funny you say that because I look at you accomplish things and I think, wow, that's really my mom. That's big
Oh,
shoes to fill.
Thanks, Afsana.
that's beautiful. I'm wondering if you have any advice for parents with children in similar situations, either as mom or as a nurse or both.
Yeah, I think that, I would say to families that in similar situations, to coach their children to self-manage, right? And to respect their wishes and support them in that. And, the parental role changes. Instead of parenting, it turns into a coaching role, really, right? So as to enable them to be as independent as possible in order for them to continue to thrive amidst this terrible journey would be I think that would probably be like my number one thing to say. And also, of course, the self-care piece, and not to take things personally when there's a lot of pain and there are changes with personality that go along with that. And I constantly had to remind myself, that's not really Afsana, that's not my kid. And sometimes I would say it out loud, and I would say, Afsana, where's my kid? Where's my kid? Right? That's not my kid. Right. So all open communication, honest communication, and humor, played a huge role in our coping, right? We were we used that quite a bit, actually. And sometimes we made fun of the condition, right? And we made fun, like you made fun of your eyes, for example. Right.
I did.
Yeah.
I called them these glowing werewolf eyes because they were so yellow.
Yeah.
Oh, this is a big one. If you could speak to Afsana's donor, what would you say to them?
Oh, so much to say. Yet, there aren't enough words really to express my gratitude and everything else that I feel. It's just impossible, really. But I would simply say, thank you for saving my child's life, or thank you for giving her a second chance at life.
Now, for the both of you, is there anything else that I perhaps didn't ask you about today that either of you would want to share or ask each other as well?
I would definitely add that it's okay to ask for help, whether you're the patient or the caregiver. You have your community around you, you have your health team, you have your friends, your family, everyone around you that you can ask for little things like, can you make me a meal today? I could really use a salad. Takes 2 seconds, and if they're 5 minutes away down the road, they'll be more than happy, and that's their way of helping you without them even knowing how to help you. You're telling them in that way.
I think for myself, I would say, in terms of asking for help, the ultimate help in this kind of a situation is also okay to ask for. I know Afsana had a tremendously difficult time to put herself on a transplant list, right? And start her campaign. She did not want a living donor at first, and she waited a whole year, and we worried that, and her transplant team worried that she was going to deteriorate to the point of then not being able to have a transplant, period. And so it took her a while to come to terms with it's okay to ask for that ultimate gift, because there's somebody out there that wants to do it. And her transplant team, I recall speaking to her and saying, don't take that choice away from somebody else just because you think they're going to go through pain and you don't want them to go through pain. Because that's how Afsana felt, is that I will not put anybody else through pain. Because when you look at Afsana today, she's had her transplant and she's already made tremendous amount of impact. In fact, she's contributed to others having transplants and saving their lives, right? So my question to Afsana is like, when I asked you, what changed your mind? And I know you had a lot of existential conversations with Dad. You said to me, well, I'm choosing life. And it was as simple as that. So having chosen life, having put yourself out there, given that you know, as difficult as it was because you were a very private person and you had to expose yourself. What are your thoughts on the fact that you chose life, you went ahead, in comparison to, no, I don't want this?
I think it was worth it because I remember thinking really late at night when the insomnia was bad that I'm going to choose life and I'm going to tell my mom tomorrow that I'm choosing life. For a second, she's awake, she's getting that text. And that night when I was thinking about it, I thought about the other option of not choosing life and what I'd be missing out on. And the only thing I could even bear the thought of and did not like it at all was that I'd be leaving behind my loved ones. And I couldn't do that to them. It wasn't about me. Once you die, you're dead. And at that point, I didn't believe in an afterlife. So I thought it was just lights out. But I remembered that just because it's lights out, happily ever after, no more pain for me, I'm giving my pain to the people who love me then. And so why can't I accept that one person wants to do that for me, to go through pain so that I can live, instead of me dying and causing this whole tsunami of pain for a lot more people than just one person who wants to do this. And it may not be as painful as I think it's going to be because I haven't been through a transplant at that point. So what do I really know in the end?
And look at all you've accomplished now, right? In such a short amount of time. Wow. Well, you've both and your family have been on such an incredible journey, and you know, it's so amazing to get to sit here and see how well you're doing, Afsana, and get to be part of your life in the way that I am now, and get to see all of the ripple effect of what your anonymous donor did and what your family has done to keep you here. And this is just the beginning of your life and just the beginning of your journey. And there are so many more incredible things to come. And how lucky again that all of those patients who are going to have you as their nurse are going to be. So thank you to both of you for being on the podcast today. We truly appreciate what you've done and what you continue to do.
Thank you for
Thanks
having
for having us.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Living Transplant podcast. If you did, please leave us a review and share with your friends. Don't forget to subscribe to Living Transplant wherever you are listening today. If you have any ideas for podcast episodes, you can reach out to us at livingorgandonation@uhn.ca or on social at GiveLifeUHN. For more information about living organ donation, you can visit us at www.livingorgandonation.ca. Special thanks to Lead Podcasting for editing this episode and for production support. Thanks to Paula Neves, our advisor to the show. I'm your host, Candice Coghlan. Thanks for spending your time with us.